Every soldier of a bad cause eventually wakes up and realizes they were fighting for the wrong side.
It began to strike me that feminism actually brought out the worst in women. And that was the thing that began to niggle at me after many years in which I called myself a feminist and I taught at various universities. And it began to strike me that even though all of the measurable goals of the feminist movement had clearly been attained, feminists didn't seem to be any happier about the state of the world. And in fact, it seemed to me that they were as angry or even angrier than they had ever been, very keen on lecturing men on toxic masculinity and everything else, very keen on telling men what they owed to women, which seemed to be everything. And many men were quite willing to try to give to women what they were demanding, but not at all keen in talking about what women owed to men, and certainly not interested in talking about what men had given to women over the centuries, why gender roles had developed as they did in times when the survival of the human race was much more challenging than it is today, and not at all interested in talking about gratitude or in praising men for the changes in society and in the social order that men had been willing to give to women. So that lack of gratitude, that anger, that accusatory tone, all of those began to really turn me off. And I also finally, I think the sort of assertion of female moral superiority really got to me as well. It was as if no matter what the situation, it was impossible for feminists to admit that women ever did wrong. And also, of course, as I just said, impossible for them to admit that men ever did right. And it began to strike me that feminism actually brought out the worst in women.
First, I'll give Auntie her props. It takes humility to admit you are wrong, especially after spending years teaching, promote, and defending something. But I won't pretend something doesn't stand out. These realizations almost always come late, after the prime years, after decades of men being blamed, mocked, and made the default problem in society. That part is hard to ignore, because when someone spends their most influential years helping push an idea that reshapes culture, and only later admits it created anger, entitlement, and division, the damage has already traveled far. Now look at the contradictions she highlighted. The movement achieved its measurable goals, yet the anger never stopped. Endless conversations about what men owe women, almost none about responsibility the other way. A tone that rarely allows women to be wrong and rarely allows men to be right. Very little gratitude for the role both sides played in building society. That pattern feels familiar. It's like when children push against structure, demand total freedom, and reject guidance, only to later realize the boundaries were there to protect and stabilize them. And when reality hits, the frustration often gets directed back at the very structure they once insisted on removing. That's not an insult, that's human behavior. And we've all seen it. This is why structure matters. Scripture has always been clear about order inside the family, not in terms of worth, but in terms of responsibility and leadership. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. 1 Corinthians 11:3. That's a hierarchy of accountability. God, man, woman, children. That model built stable families, and stable families built strong societies. When that order gets rejected, confusion tends to take its place. So yes, respect to her for finally seeing it and saying it out loud, but it's also a reminder. Ideas don't just stay in classrooms or books. They shape how generations think, live, and treat one another. Like, subscribe, and share so we keep cutting through the noise. This is The Chat. We out.